right, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for coming out today. I know it's a little bit brisk. I'm Missy Ackerman. I'm the Associate Athletic Director here at CWRU, and I'd like to welcome you and thank you for joining us in celebration of the 50th anniversary of Title IX. Today is going to be a great afternoon. We have many reasons to recognize the success of all of our programs, which span far more than just 50 years. So we have friends, family who are in attendance, buddies from college teammates. We have Mr. Lou Stark, our Vice President, Janice Gerda, and Helen Cogner from the archives, who is so instrumental in helping us find some of these pictures. I hope you get a chance to enjoy them. But please join me in welcoming our panelists who are sharing their experiences here as an athlete. And we have 4 decades represented here. From left to right, Dr. Billy Navajowski, Dr. Elaine Harper, Michelle Wood, and Mel Cuellar. I'm going to turn it over to Mel, then I'll be brief, I'll be seated. They'll ask questions, and you'll have a chance for a couple of questions right at the end before we wrap up. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Missy. So hello everybody, my name is Melissa Cuellar, but everybody here at PACE calls me Mel, or Coach Mel, Melly, Mel Money, anything you want to say, I'll take it all. And I'm just so excited to be here, so excited to be with these amazing women and just to learn, right? We're all here and ready to learn. So we're just going to kick it off with our first question, and this is going to be everybody needs to answer. So we'll start at the end, Billy, take it away. So what brought you to CWRU, and where did athletics fit in your decision to attend?
It wasn't engineering, as I'm figuring this out now. Is that right? What brought me to CASE is, I think like so many of the women that I had an opportunity to talk to earlier today, I was a pre-med student and came from a very small town in Ohio where athletics were big for women. We had any number of scholastic teams, and I was very blessed to have experienced that. When I came to CASE, it was a very different notion. But certainly scholastic issues were number one, and having the opportunity to play some sports was number 2.
I would say outstanding academics and opportunities for athletic involvement. Not only those 2 things, but also they were in the proportion that matched the goals that I had intended in terms of balancing academics and athletics. And I always knew that Case Western Reserve University was top-notch. I loved being around top-notch people. But then when I got here, I was like, whoa. I'd be in a class and I'm thinking, oh, I'm getting an A with a 95, and it turned out it was like a B-. It's like, wow. But in any case, that was the balance, having the opportunity to do both and excel in both.
I, much like Billy, also came into CASE, chemistry pre-med, and very quickly decided that was not for me, and switched majors. And I think when I came to CASE, I had no intentions of doing any sort of athletic endeavor. I had a few roommates who were volleyball players, so I decided I had better get involved in something on the athletic side, and I decided to row crew as a freshman that fall, which when they saw me and they realized that I was loud, little, and bossy, they quickly put me in the coxswain role. And then that spring I saw a brochure for the softball program, which was a brand new program at CASE, and was very heavily promoting the idea of spring break in Cocoa Beach, Florida, which was a little bit of a misnomer, since I don't think in 4 years of the softball program we ever saw the beach. So it's a little bit misleading, and we may want to change our promotion of the program, but that was really, once I found out that there was a softball program, it completely changed my decision to play athletics, and here I am.
Yeah, and like many of you, I came for opportunities, right? So I'm small town Nebraska, central Nebraska, and for me, Cleveland, and this school gave me not only next 1, 2, 3, 4 steps in the 4 years, but then after that, I was like, whoa, I can have a job anywhere after coming here. I'm sold. And then in terms of athletics, that was for me actually an afterthought. I was like, I'm gonna go here, I'm gonna make a lot of money when I graduate, and might as well play softball and indoor track while I do it. Fortunately, that became a big part of my identity, and so fortunate that I was able to be on the softball team and the track team. But keeping kind of into that athletic theme, who were the most influential people in your athletic life? And Michelle, we'll start with you this time.
So I grew up with a younger and an older brother, and so as I really thought about this question, I had to reflect back to think, who were the most influential people? And I really think it was probably growing up with brothers and realizing that when you have a neighborhood full of all boys, it's either athletics or you kind of have to sit in the house by yourself. And so you just kind of get thrown into athletics. And I was actually born with bilateral club feet. So from a very young age, kind of told, you're probably not going to do much from an athletic standpoint. And I remember being fairly young and watching Christy Yamaguchi, who was also a bilateral clubfoot athlete, who was winning medal after medal after medal in junior Olympics and then into the Olympics. And I thought to myself, there's nothing that's holding me back. And so, I kind of said, look, I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna do it right. And that was really, probably from an outside perspective, one of the people that pushed me into athletics.
I love that too, because for me, it was my siblings as well, my sister and my brother. My brother was the person who took me out. It would be snowing. I was like, let's go outside, let's go play volleyball. It's a snow day, we have all day to play now. And so when you say that, for me as well, my brother and my sister were the most influential people in my athletic life, not only to play sports, but also to keep being better. I will say that they're my inspiration, and my sister is the strongest woman I know in my life. My brother is the person who's gonna get anything done if you tell him to, so I 100% am in the same boat with you. And then, so Lane, how about you?
So I have a really long list of people who have influenced athletics and encouraged me along the way. Initially, when I was 14, my mom always wanted us to be good readers. So she said I could subscribe to any 2 magazines that I wanted. So as a 14-year-old, I obviously got Psychology Today, because that was my thing. And in fact, I did come to Case and become a psychology major as I started my academic career. But the second magazine was Young Miss. So it was kind of like a teen magazine, like a little girly magazine where you learn about makeup and everything. But the first episode it's not a podcast, they were magazines actually. So the first magazine that I got in the mail, on the cover was a picture of Nancy Lieberman. And I thought, who is this Nancy Lieberman? And I was reading about her, and she was the first woman that I ever became aware of who played basketball. And I thought, well, that's interesting. So even though I never met her, I definitely see that as the first opportunity to say, yes, I can do this. And then from there, obviously my coaches, my very first coach was Debbie Anderson. She was the secretary at the high school where I went in North Royalton. And she was my first basketball coach. And then beyond that, in high school, I had Chris Bain was my coach. When I was here at Case Western Reserve University, my coaches were Kim Jordan and Carol Dugan. And then when I went on to play in Europe, also those coaches were very influential as well. My dad also was super influential. He was born in Greece and played for the Cretan soccer team. So I knew that he was a sports fanatic. He put the first basketball hoop up in our driveway with some wood and concrete. And then also my mother also allowed us to go into whatever passions we were following. Like we were allowed to try lots of different things. so I was playing basketball, I had the basketball with me all the time, but at one point she said, you know, you're gonna get sick of it. You're gonna get sick of playing basketball, that's all you're doing. And I said, oh, well, if I get sick of it, then I'll stop playing, and obviously I never did. So, a lot of influence in my life with people that have helped to encourage and nurture that in me.
I love that. Billy, how about you?
Well, with a name like Billy, the expectation was that I was going to be my father's son, named after him. That didn't quite work out, but I think the three people who, when I really reflected on this, who were the most influential was number one, my mother, because she had a philosophy and she would say, Billy, you can do anything you want to do if you want to do it bad enough. You have to work hard and seek out the information and the talents you can make happen. So that started me off believing I could play any sport. I could play football, I could play basketball, and was disappointed when I wasn't allowed to try out for the football team in high school because I could pass the ball further than any of the guys. That had complications, certainly with your dating scene, but beyond that. And the second person that was most influential was my high school coach, because she believed that women could play any sport that they wanted to play. And she provided us with the opportunity to play basketball, to play volleyball, to have a track and field team, to play flag football, and we played speedway instead of soccer. But there was always some kind of movement and activity going on, and she made us believe in ourselves. She always said, if you look like a team, you'll play like a team. So we always had to have our shirts properly, addressed, and if we had to tuck them in, we tucked them in because we had to look like that team. And then the third person was when I came here to CWRU. It was Nancy Gray. She came the same year that I did. As a freshman, she took over the program, and quite frankly, she was a silent pit bull. She worked hard to move our program from, when I first came, we had no uniforms. We played in the field hockey tunics to play basketball. Rather embarrassing when all the other teams had uniforms. And we were being asked if we were going to take our skirts off before we played. But she stood with it and she fought to build a program. It took a long time to do that, but with that kind of mentorship and the other three coaches that she had by her side, Janet Witten, Catherine Karapides, and Mina Moore, the program began to build itself. And you all have reaped the benefits of that 50 years of hard work and determination.
Yes, I can definitely say we have, for sure. And we're going to be able to hear some kind words from Nancy Gray from Coach Lenise later, so thank you for foreshadowing that. This next question is kind of for us. Were you conscious, any of you, honestly all of you, were you conscious of blazing a path when you were doing so? And when did you become aware of that? I know both of you guys are itching, so Elaine, we'll start with you and then Billy will go.
Absolutely not. Had no idea what was happening. All I knew is that I had always played on boys' teams because there were no girls' teams. And then they said, oh, there's going to be a girls' team. You're tall, you should play basketball. And I thought, wow, okay. But I had no idea that that was a thing. And it wasn't until quite some time later that I understood what Title IX was about, and that there were so many people fighting for that so that we could have the opportunities that we had.
Well, yeah, as I reflected back on it, I was aware that we were forging a new road for women's athletics here at this university because there was so little. I mean, coming from a small high school that had so much more, I thought, wow, you can do more than just be smart and wise and well educated. That you could play all these games. And under the tutelage of the women that were coming in to coach, we were able to move forward, but we were aware that we were laying the groundwork and setting a pathway, from our fundraising for the first year when we got uniforms. Oh, how proud we were of those things. No skirts. And yet we wore the same uniform for all of our sports that we played. And traveling in the station wagons that we would crowd, half the time the whole team would be in the station wagon. We'd be sitting on each other's laps so that we could get to the game at Hiram or wherever. And knowing that when we first came, I think that first year we only played 4 to 6 games in both basketball and volleyball, and wanting to, we need to do more, and there's more that we can do. And the other thing that I think we realized, the importance of the collaborative community that we were forming with women in other universities. Because after every game, no matter what sport, you sat around and you talked and you shared punch and cookies or whatever treat that someone had brought in, and talked with them about their experience at their university. And it began to become very clear to all of us that there was a long way yet to go. And remember, this was 2 years before Title IX was even signed.
So I think we were probably a little bit more aware of Title IX only because that was why softball was added as a sport. So Case was one female sport short at Case Western, and so in 1996, the softball program was added as an additional varsity sport. So I don't think we really thought of ourselves as trailblazers at the time. Looking back now, when we had to fight the ping pong players for space in the basement to practice, you well remember, those ping pong players were crazy too. I mean, there was a net there was a batting cage, and and those kids would take direct hits and would not move. So Exactly. So I don't think we saw ourselves as trailblazers at the time. We understood the impact that it was having. We knew that it was a new program. We knew that there was not a budget for the program, that we were certainly the lowest sport on the totem pole in terms of practice time and everything that we fought for. But looking back now, 25 years later, at the facilities that the softball program has and the alumni support and the fundraising that's taking place that provides some of those additional incentives to the program has made a tremendous difference. And I'm certainly proud to have been part of that initial team that made some of this possible.
First, I just want to say thank you. I think that's the biggest thing from the crowd and from honestly anybody in crew athletics. You guys are trailblazers. I think for me, when you walked in the door, I was like, wow, they've done so much. And when I walked the door, I'm like, yeah, I'm just here because I showed up for practice. Like, I just gotta do this. And so for me, when I look back, I'm like, wow, you guys really built a path for Billy, you built a path so Michelle could run through it. Michelle, you ran so I could basically fly through it. Who knows what's gonna be next, right? Probably some sort of like multiverse kind of thing. That's what's next. But I want to say that because as we reflect as young women, as young men, as people who are gonna keep this moving forward, and you guys aren't done yet either. It's nice to say thank you, and it's nice to know that we have such great people within this alumni network. So I just want to say that, and move on to the next question as well. But Billy, this is for you. How did you perceive the merger of schools federation and the effects of athletics for women?
I'm going to be honest with you. It was a long time coming, and it, as you even said, it was almost 20 years, 24 years before they recognized the importance of athletics and with the NCAA. Back when, it was the DGWS that sort of controlled women's athletics, certainly in Ohio, and in some of the other states it's even continued. The merger was a challenge. There were three colleges, Case, Western Reserve, was made up of Mather and Adelbert. And it wasn't well received that there would be this combined university. Mather had facilities that, if you get a chance, I got to walk the hall, and there is a picture of the Mather gym that has 3 columns on each side, and that was the out of bounds line when we were playing basketball. You had to have your foot against the column when you went to throw the ball in. The wall at the end was where the basketball hoops were hung, and again, when you did a layup, you kind of had to do a little twist so that you didn't smack into the wall and fall over. There were no seats for visitors to come. My parents could only come to my games when we played away games, because you either stood in the hallway, or maybe if you could stand, because there wasn't enough room even for chairs, that we barely had enough room for the team to sit when we came in. And we had no access to the men's facilities during any of the time. It wasn't until my senior year, which was the year that Title IX was signed in '72, that we were allowed to play at Western Reserve, the Adelbert gym. And that was only when we had a game, not for any practice. I spent all 4 years practicing in the Mather gym. And I can also tell you, there were the acceptance of women in some of the programs was totally even non-tolerated. I remember going into one of my calculus, it was either my calculus or logic course over here at Case, and the professor got up front and said, you, and you, as he pointed to all 12 women that were in the class. He said, you don't belong here, and I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that you don't continue here. And so if I were you, when you leave class today, go re-register for another class. And I'm not the only one. There were folks that experienced that, and even as I had an opportunity to talk with some of the young women today who are in engineering, indicating that, it's a little bit better than that, but there's still some concerns. Title IX was not about athletics. Title IX was about women's equality in education. And as a result of that, certainly our coaches and those who were in the athletic areas pushed it forward, but there was still the lack of equality for women in certain occupations and in certain trainings. So it was a tough go, and I think we still have a long way to go with many more things that we can continue to improve with respect to women's equality.
I agree, we're not done yet, period. And Michelle, could you please reflect on your experience being on a first team at CWRU?
So when softball was added, the decision came down between adding lacrosse or adding softball. And I think the idea that Coach Chambers Farrell was coming in as the new volleyball coach and had some softball experience made that a pretty easy decision for the university. But I think being that first group of athletes, we felt a pressure to make sure that the right sport had been selected. So I think we took that on personally. We did quite well my 4 years. We put 3 championship banners on the wall for the softball program. So I think we took that to heart. But as I really reflected back, I was trying to figure out what was most different about being on a first-year team. And I think as I look back at my friends from the softball program, I think the biggest impact it had was you didn't come in with that natural class system, right? We all came in as first-year players. So we were freshmen to seniors, but we were all first-year players. So we had a bond that I don't think other teams had the opportunity to experience, because you already have your cliques established by the time the new kids come in, and you're mentoring them and you're helping them along. but it's different than what we got to experience. And I will tell you, there are 6 of us that still get together once a year in a different city every year, and we are not all in the same age. I mean, we range from freshmen to seniors. And I think that was really one of the most significant impacts of having that opportunity to go through that together.
That's amazing. Trailblazers, again. And so Lane, you had the opportunity to play abroad, which is amazing. How were your collegiate experiences different from you and your pro teammates?
Yeah, I never thought that my first job out of college would be as a professional athlete. Having come to Case Western Reserve University, I was preparing really hard with the academics, but I had this opportunity that came up. And what I realized in Greece, where I played, was based in Athens, Greece. At the time, the women's teams were like club sports. So they weren't connected to high schools, they weren't connected to colleges. An organization, a pro team, would have essentially like a D-League of girls who wanted to play and who wanted to compete. And when they would need additional folks on the roster, they would look to that junior club team to recruit players and then bring them up to the professional ranks. So that was very different for me, because I went having completed my college education and I had been a collegiate athlete, so that was a little bit different. What was absolutely the same was the fierce competitiveness and the extraordinary talent that these women had. I thought I was going to go over there and be like, what do they know in Europe playing basketball? What do they know, right? And these women were fierce. And in their own way, in their own time, in that country, they were blazing the way as well. And in fact, there was more interest and following of women's basketball in Greece at the time than there was here in the United States. Obviously, it was way before the WNBA. So it was a really, really fascinating experience. Got to travel throughout Europe, throughout Greece. I'm Greek. My parents were born on the island of Crete, so I had an advantage because I did speak the language and I did have a few relatives there. But it was an amazing experience, for sure.
That's crazy, yeah. Oof, so watch out for Greece. That's all I gotta say. And next question, so what has been the effect of being an athlete, or what has the effect of being an athlete been on your careers? I don't know if I read that right, but Michelle, take it away.
So I think one of the biggest lessons that I learned from playing softball that has translated into my career is really adaptability, right? As we all know, the only constant in life is change, and if you are a softball player in the state of Ohio, you had better be ready to not look at the softball schedule, right? Because you can plan to play 3, maybe 2 to 3 doubleheaders a week for the remainder of the season, most of which don't occur, and then you're suddenly playing 18 days of doubleheaders in a row at the end of the season. So I think that really prepared me for the working world and understanding that what is put on the schedule for today is probably not what's actually going to occur, and project timelines are going to change, and everything is going to be in that constant state of flux. And I think playing that varsity sport in Ohio really prepared me for the working world.
Billy, do you have any thoughts?
I ended up becoming a psychologist, and I found that the work that I was doing was very similar to being a player or a coach of a sport. Teaching teamwork. There is no I in team, and it's about working together in a cooperative way. And I think having had the blessings of being able to play a number of sports, I learned how to fail. I learned how to fail publicly. I learned how to to utilize the support of those around me, and that working together cooperatively led us to a better performance, both in the family, for individuals going through therapy. It's understanding how do you work with other people, your social skills, and being a part of a team was so helpful, both with life skills that I could then turn that around in a career and to teach others.
3 things come to mind for me. The teamwork aspect, I think of the multidisciplinary teams that we have in work. You will all be on a team. Wherever you go from case and you start your work, you will always be on some type of team. Maybe a homogeneous team, maybe a multidisciplinary team, and the dynamics that happen within your team as an athlete, they play out very similarly in your teams at work. So that is something that you will have a very, very big advantage having worked through these experiences around teamwork and collaboration. The second thing is so many opportunities as an athlete to develop your emotional intelligence, keeping your composure, being able to maintain yourself while maybe assisting a teammate who might need that calm, being able to be in those real intense situations. Can you all think of an intense situation that you've been in athletics, sports? I'm saying heads nod. That's something that you develop over time. And you will take, those same things into your work, into your family, into your relationships. That's my husband in the back there, James Harper, videotaping. And emotional intelligence training and collegiate athletics has served me well in my marriage for 31 years. So, and finally, the third thing is, I think similar to what you said, Billy, which is learning how to fail. Okay, when you lose, or when you make a mistake, or when something doesn't go as planned, that's a thing, right? You have to be able to recover from it. You have to be able to look either at the stats or at the film and determine what didn't go right in this situation. You do the same thing in your life, in your career, with your families, anytime that there's some type of issue. And the one thing I always, that I strive to do, even though I didn't know who Russell Wilson was when I was a collegiate athlete, I love when he always says you have to develop this ability for what? Have amnesia. You made a mistake, you screwed up, you lost, you missed the play, you mentally blanked out for a second, move on from it. You let it go and then you move forward. And that helps you going in your career and with your families and with your relationships.
Yeah, and for me, I think you guys all really were in my brain and just said this is what it is. Because I agree, it's adaptability, it's teamwork, it's falling down and getting back up. And I think for myself, what has made me a different person being an athlete is being a go-getter, right? I fall down, I'm like, all right, I'm gonna do it again and I'm gonna do it with style. So like that, I think I just go and I go and I go and I wanna be better.
That's
And
right.
Right?
I love that. And from Billy in the 1970s, 5 decades up, it's not gonna change, hasn't changed. That's gonna be a consistent theme.
For sure, athletes, we're built different, for sure. And you know, in terms of, you know, athletics, you know, you've all stayed so close to athletics. You know, what was ingrained in you by being an athlete and why have you stayed so close to athletics post-college? And Michelle?
I think athletics really instills a sense of discipline in your life, and you take that discipline with you wherever you go, right? It's being able to come to a university like Case Western that is as strong as it is academically, you really have to make choices, right? You can't do everything every day. So if you want to play a varsity sport on top of that, you have to stay disciplined to make sure that you are putting in the time and energy to work out, to study for your courses. And it does mean sacrificing other portions of your life because you've made that decision to participate. And so I think that level of discipline carries throughout the rest of your life.
Elaine, do you have thoughts? I'm putting you on the spot.
I think some of the qualities about being an athlete and having that ingrained in me, go back to being able to be fiercely competitive, but then also be a compassionate teammate. Being able to stand up and speak, maybe in a place where you're not comfortable, because as women in general, not only in athletics, there are a lot of men around, and it's up to us to be able to have that courage to stand up and speak as well. I think having a healthy lifestyle along the way, being an athlete, it's like, when are we gonna work out? What are we eating? Are we having too much sugar? What can we continue to do to keep ourselves physically healthy? And then the last thing in terms of what was ingrained to me is this desire to take my experience and share it with my family. My husband, James, and I, we have 3 grown-up kids now. They all play collegiate athletics. One went on a full scholarship. That's what we did. We were in the gym. And in fact, my first date with my husband was, we got together for a Monday night football game. And so that was
Quick
the
question,
thing.
do you remember who was playing?
Yeah, it was the Bears.
Oh, okay, shout out to Chicago, everybody.
The Bears were playing and we went to Pizza Hut after class. Yeah. So those things kind of stay. Those things are part of who I am.
From a sort of pragmatic standpoint, 50 years later, and I've continued in sports, but the reality of life is use it or lose it. And movement is an important part of life. It's a great way to meet friends. It's a great way to engage with people, and regardless of whether it is individual sports or team sports, moving is going to make a difference for longevity for the most part. And I'm just a strong advocate that regardless of what it is you choose to do it with the same passion that you're experiencing now as you're playing on your teams.
Everybody write that down, use it or lose it, especially in the off season. Use it or lose it. And for me, I think I've stayed so close to athletics. I graduated in 2020 and I'm an assistant coach now. And for me, what draws me back is the energy. I get so much energy from being around you athletes because you push to go forward. In a game, it's last inning. Is this hit gonna score us a run or are we gonna go home? Hopefully not. But I think that energy keeps me going, and that's the energy I take into my personal life as well. So, but overall, use it or lose it. I'm saving that for my life. And I want all of you guys to answer this question as well. What is your hope for the next 50 years of athletics? I know you all took a deep breath because we just went through 50 years of Title IX, but what do you want to see next? Michelle?
So, certainly, to your earlier comments, there's been a lot of trailblazing that's occurred in the last 50 years, but there is a lot more to occur. I mean, I'm an accountant now by trade, so I looked up some numbers. And I looked at your bio and saw you were a professional basketball player. So women in the WNBA make 1.7% of what men in the NBA make today. Okay, so that is less than 2% of the men's salary. So we still have a tremendous amount of work to do, and you guys are that generation that's going to be the next group of trailblazers. So please continue on. We've come a long way in 50 years, but we've got a lot further to go.
I agree, I was thinking equality, we're not there yet. There have been strides made, and we can't just say, oh yeah, that's been great, we've made some progress. The next 50 years, we better get to that equality. That would be a goal that I would have, for sure.
Yeah, when you think about that, we even haven't passed the Equal Rights Amendment. And, women were granted the right to vote back in 1919. There's a lot more to be done, and women's voices need to be heard. Title IX, again, as I mentioned, was not just about athletics. It's about across the board equality for women and having the right to pursue any of their interests the same as their male counterparts. And I would like to, I hope and pray that we begin to see a movement towards greater equality, not just on the athletic field, but it become an issue that we look and we see everyone as equal partners all the way around.
Can I just add also, I'm looking out and I'm seeing maybe a couple of male athletes and a couple of other men in the room. And what you do and how you support women, that's a trailblazing thing as well. To be able to stand up and say, women deserve this, women have value, we need to respect women, and to be the lead, especially maybe among men who still don't necessarily believe that that's the case. So, to the guys in the room, thanks for being here, having our back.
And for me, I think the next 50 years are continuing to break barriers, right? We've broken so many, but like you've all said, we're not done yet. We have so much more to come in terms of pay equality, having women in leadership. We've seen so many in the UAA having the first woman to win a championship at Chicago. That is huge, right? And so that was the first, and it's been 50 years of Title IX. So I'm so excited for what's next, but I hope that we continue to break those barriers, not only for myself, but for everybody in this room and for everybody after us that follows in athletics, but also specifically CWRU athletics as well. And with that, Coach Leaney, I don't know if you want to come up or do you want a few minutes? And then we'll take some questions from the crowd as well.
All right, I'm speaking on behalf of Nancy Gray. Why am I speaking? I knew Nancy well. I worked for her back in the early 90s, from 90 to 94. I was an assistant cross-country coach to Coach Sudak. And I didn't have an office then. I just kind of worked out of anyone's office at the time. But Nancy was always very welcoming to me. She had taught me a lot about being a woman coach. And I guess I spoke with her, and I can't even begin. I'm supposed to have 2 minutes to speak. But what I want to say is that there's nothing I can say in 2 minutes to understand the magnitude of her wealth in athletics and how she pushed the programs forward for all of you. And I go back to when I was part-time coach. I was making $1,000 a year, coaching cross-country and track, and doing other things at the time, but understanding how far we've come from that. Nancy was always an advocate for the women to get more. And when I was coaching for her at the time in this department, she always came to me and asked me what my needs were, and I didn't even know at that time. So I've learned a lot coming back to Case in 2001, so I've had a total of 26 years here. But I talked with her for an hour the other day, and I just want to talk about a couple points. And Billy, you played for Nancy, and one of the things she talked about was how they moved from the one gym to the other, and how they were pushing, like you said, their foot off of a pillar in order to make a basket. And when they moved into the Adelbert gym, while it was a great transformation for them, it was hard. I mean, it was still not equal, and they still weren't feeling welcome in that gym during that time. She talked about the uniforms that you talked about also, and how she really pushed to get them something appropriate to play in. So that was, you know, as we look at our uniforms today, we've got multiple uniforms. We've got home, we've got away, and she was just trying to scrap any colors together for an away, and I think they had green uniforms for their year away, and then maybe the school color for home, I'm not sure which. But just feeling fortunate that that you do have a blue and a gray or a blue and a white uniform to play in, and they're doing throwback this weekend, which they do have the Mather colors. So there's 3 uniforms for basketball in 3 different colors. So I mean, just understanding how far we have come. Nancy was here for 29 years. She came in the 70s. She was here when Title IX was instituted and had stayed until, I believe, 1999, I think, was her last year here. So 29 years and you know, pushing programs through and seeing the changes for women. I would thank her in your dreams, in a sense, because she was really that advocate that pulled Case Western women's sports forward. And now we're almost winning national championships with the soccer team. So, and you know, the much of the success from a lot of the other teams that have put forth softball. I know, you know, cross country, we were 6th in the nation. Softball, you were what? You were runners. You were in the Final Four? What was it? You were up there. Okay, so, I mean, just to think what we didn't have and now what we have now is just, it's unfathomable. And I do want to say one thing, and Nancy mentioned this too, and everybody else has mentioned it, is that we're not done. And if you were paying attention last year, and we had this conversation yesterday, if you're paying attention last year to the women's locker rooms at the NCAA championship versus to the men's locker rooms in basketball, and the inequalities that are just being brought up today. So understanding that we have a lot farther to go, and that if you see something that is not equal, I think you need to speak on it, and you are the people that can make that change, and make the change for the young, or the women of the future. I ran with boys my freshman year in high school, and I got spat on, I got elbowed, I got kicked, and by my sophomore year in high school, we formed a team, and we did it ourselves. So there's things that you can do to make it better for yourself, whether it be your team, whether it be the locker room, whether it be plane rights, or whatever it might be that you're seeing that is not equal for you. So Nancy pushed that in me. She's doing well, but she's a proud woman, and she's going through some challenges right now and didn't want to be here. So I'm happy I could speak on behalf of her, and if I could be half of her, my career would be very successful. So let's hear it for Nancy.
All right, so we're gonna take some questions from the floor. So if you wanna raise your hand, stand up, name, sport, I would gladly appreciate it. So who's gonna be first? We're trailblazers. Anybody? All right, I have a question. So I think one of the biggest questions for me was, as you come back and you see what we have now, what was the biggest aha moment for you? Or what was the wow for you?
I can speak to that. It was seeing the statistics that the women athletes had in each of their sports and some of the documentation down. I got a chance to walk down the halls and see the All-Americans, and it was fabulous seeing so many women listed in that hallway. And then going downstairs where there was the different awards. I was only familiar with the Dorothy Hozo Award and the Emily Andrews Award, but there were some additional ones, and seeing women's names, and then picking up the basketball program for the game tonight and seeing statistics of women. You know, when I was honored because of Nancy to be in the Hall of Fame here at CWRU, when everyone else that year that got up, they were listing all the statistics of the points scored and the games played and, any number of things. And when they went to introduce me, they could say, she played 3 sports 4 years. There were no statistics. There were no photographs. There was no information. And it was only the information that was held in the heads of the coaches that we had at the university. So I'm impressed that we've made that step forward in documenting all the accomplishments that so many of you have contributed to here. It's an honor, and as I said to the soccer team, I was proud as proud could be watching your final game at the division championship. Just seeing you representing this university and knowing how far we had come in not even having a soccer team back when I was here, you did me honor. Thank you.
I second that, Billy, what you said about the women soccer team. It's fantastic. Certainly the facilities here have exponentially become world-class. I mean, it's great. Having played where we played with poles in the gym and not having a whole lot of places to lift weights or do our off-season training, please don't take that for granted. And I'm sure it could be even better, and there are lots of ideas about how to continue to build, but that has been fantastic. The other thing for me is it's so amazing to see all of the teams that are here, women's teams, who continue to thrive and have very full rosters. Like, you have rosters. I didn't have a chance to say when I was playing basketball, our roster was 7. And so you had to learn how to play with 4 fouls the entire second half. And if you got popped in the nose, the coach would toss you a towel, you'd wipe it, and you'd keep running, before they had all the bloodborne pathogen stuff. But it's so good to see such a robust community of female athletes here on campus. I love it.
So I also have an opportunity to sit on the Hall of Fame committee for CASE. And I have to say, as we had the discussions this year, the field of female athletes was amazing. It was one of the hardest decisions, trying to really look at what these women have contributed to this organization and only select a handful of people to go in. So that really makes you proud when you think about, even in the last, one of my roommates is sitting in here, and I'm trying to think, we've probably been on the committee 5, maybe 6 years. Oh, has it been 10? Wow.
You're entering my world.
And you see the amount of women that are being nominated on a regular basis. So again, what I would continue to push is continue to nominate your teammates. This is, as you walk past that room, it's definitely impressive, but the amount of women that are sitting down there is not nearly as impressive as it needs to be. So please nominate your teammates, nominate legends that you've heard of in your sports to make sure that we have the representation that we deserve in that room.
Any questions? All right, Carly Tucci.
Yes, all right, so hi, I'm Carly, I'm a senior, I'm on the softball team here. So as you guys were playing, when you had your successes, I'm guessing they weren't nearly as recognized as male teams and your male counterparts. How did you reconcile that, and did it just turn into like internal validation instead of external? Or did it like bring your team closer together because you just celebrated your victories with yourself rather than looking for like fans or other kind of accolades? How did you guys?
How'd you celebrate?
And that's an excellent question, and of course, we were so used to what we were experiencing. You know, if there was a mention in the campus newspaper, it was like party time, you know, wow. Somebody even actually went to the game or heard about it more likely because they couldn't see it. But I think the camaraderie was an important part. You know, as I mentioned earlier, we were scholars first and athletes second, and we played because we loved playing. And we weren't there for the recognition. It would have been nice, but that wasn't the motivation that brought us together as a team. It was being able to look into each other's eyes and say, you know, we did one heck of a good job tonight. We really put it together. And that collaboration of all those different bodies, if we had 6, we were blessed because somebody had a lab class that night and couldn't play. We were ready to take anybody on the street. But you know, that's what mattered, more so than winning and the accolades that went with it.
I think we were recognizing one another. You know how when you're like teammates out there and they hit a home run, they score that goal, they do a defensive move that just breaks somebody's ankles, and the rest of your team, like as everyone else is like cheering for you, like you're like the superstar of all superstars. And so I felt like we had that within ourselves, and we were recognizing each other. And you know, that's part of a good cohesive team, right? To be able to have good communication among teams and to be able to lift each other up and celebrate when that happens and recognize that that was an amazing shot. That was an amazing defensive move, and to look at it that way. And then on the other hand too, it was, if it didn't go so well, we rallied around that person who kind of didn't have a good day, you know? I mean, they did at one point publish something in the newspaper, I remember, about me, and it was the fact that that night I was 3 for 21 from the field. And so, I don't know, maybe recognition, you know, you gotta take the good with the bad, but it really was amongst the team that, you know, you knew your teammates knew what you were doing, and it was highly valued.
I think it was probably a little bit better in my era. I mean, I think we got probably a little bit more coverage in the Observer, and we're competing in, you know, we were fairly successful in those years, so I think there was a little bit more publicity around that. Certainly not as much as you were seeing with some of the other sports, but I think it was probably at least a little bit better, so we made some progress in that arena. But I think to your point, I mean, it was building one another up, right? It was making sure that we were supporting one another and celebrating those wins. I mean, you guys just got to celebrate your ring ceremony, which, you know, is phenomenal and a, you know, fantastic opportunity. There was no recognition at that level. I mean, even the teams that were, and this was really across the board, any of the teams that were bringing home UAA championships, I mean, there just wasn't any sort of public recognition, and that really was probably male or female. So that was just a missed opportunity to celebrate one another.
Thank you for all putting that into perspective. I think we're all like stuck to Instagram waiting for our game to be posted now. So it's nice hearing that.
We didn't have that.
Yeah, my bad.
There was no internet.
Phone, internet, we really had cameras.
Oh my goodness. And now we're talking about metaverse. I'm telling you, they're gonna have like all of our little pictures, and that's how we're gonna celebrate. And I think we potentially have time for one more question. Okay, we're gonna squeeze one more in. Who's got it?
Hi, I'm Andrea Silva, freshman on the women's soccer team. So, obviously, we were mentioning like trailblazers and everything like that. You guys are amazing women. But what are the values that you're coming into to make like programs that stick, like programs that last? You know what I mean? Like, what are the values that everybody's coming in with that make the programs last like 50 years or even longer?
I would think it's cooperation and collaboration would be the two things. And that's, everyone has a part to play in that. You're all pieces of a giant puzzle, and when you come together and stay together, things will continue to work forward. Is if you take out your piece, there's always gonna be something missing. And if your piece is taken out, you wanna make sure that there's always gonna be somebody there to take your piece of that puzzle and to keep it going.
I love that. That was a great answer. And with that, we're gonna have some closing remarks from Missy.
Thanks. Well, again, I want to thank everybody, thank our wonderful panelists, and I hope we can have a big round of applause. So I want to thank you all for being here today, and wait, that's not all. We have the basketball game at 5:30, it's just about to get underway, where we're going to take on Brandeis, but at halftime we'll also celebrate the panelists. I hope you all can come down to the game for a little bit. And the room here will be open, so if you want to head back up, this is your own private party room up here. And I'm sure there's still some great food left over, but I also want to quickly thank the committee that helped put this together. Josie Henry, terrific job. Kathy Linese, Jennifer Reimer, who is a little bit busy right now down on the basketball court. And last but not least, Morgan Sorrell Gogler, our department assistant, who helped with all the photos and has been running around behind the scenes. And don't forget to give a shout out for TJ Shelton for pushing us to get this going and on the board. So thanks again, and